Hey, what's up guys? Matt Laidlaw here. So I wanted to tackle a subject that I get asked about a lot. I get a lot of comments on the YouTube channel, and I also get asked a lot in person. What bikes are good beginner bikes, and are Harley-Davidsons good beginner bikes? And the quick, simple answer to that is it depends, which doesn't really help anybody. So I'm going to jump into that a little bit deeper and talk to you about what that depends on. Harley-Davidson makes 36 different bikes, give or take a couple models, depending on what model year it is. And so, obviously they build a lot of bikes because there's not a one-size-fits-all motorcycle. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about kind of the best path to take when learning to ride, and some of your first motorcycle decisions that you should make, or maybe use my advice as some guidance to think about. So this here, guys, is just footage that I took probably a year ago when a group of buddies of mine, we went up to Idlewild, California. Really nice scenic ride, kind of forestry area. This is on my 2014 Street Glide Special. I know a lot of you guys have seen my videos that I've put out on this bike in the past. I no longer own this bike. I've sold it. I will be buying a brand new Harley-Davidson in probably a month or two. So stay tuned for that. I'll be doing a full build on it. But anyways, back to the subject at hand. So let me talk a little bit about some of the criteria that I base my decision making on when I'm buying a bike or suggesting a bike for a beginner rider. So the first thing you want to do, obviously, is to just go into a place that sells motorcycles, a dealership or whatever, and you want to sit on some bikes. And you can do this, it doesn't cost you a dime, and it's something easy that anybody can do immediately without any training, is just go into a dealership and sit on some bikes and make sure your feet are firmly planted on the ground. If your balls of your feet and your heels are both on the ground, that's the best. But if just the balls of your feet are on the ground, that's okay, but that's not the preferable situation. You want your full foot flat on the ground. And the other thing is you want to have someone hold the bike upright for you, and then just make sure that you can reach the hand controls, the grips, and that your feet can reach the foot controls comfortably. In my past videos, I've talked about the difference between forward controls and mid controls, and there's different styles and shapes and sizes of handlebars. So you want to make sure you pick a bike that fits you right, and you can comfortably pull the clutch, the brake lever, and comfortably shift the gear with your toe and hit the rear brake as well. So you want to make sure you have a bike that fits you properly. So here's the next kind of series of criteria that I tell people to go off of. When you're learning how to ride a motorcycle, inevitably you're going to drop the bike, you're going to have some mishaps, you're going to hit the brake, the front brake too hard at a slow turn, and you're going to go down. Some of the more common things that happen to newer riders. So typically speaking, generally speaking, most Harley-Davidsons are heavy, expensive motorcycles. So generally speaking, most Harley-Davidsons are not good beginner bikes. The reason why is they're very unforgiving when it comes to dropping the bike and just the expense of learning how to ride a bike. So the bike I'm riding right here, my Street Glide, this is about a $24,000 bike before the upgrades I did to it. If I were to drop this thing, immediately with just dropping it, I'm probably looking at anywhere between $600 to $1,100 worth of damage if I drop this bike. So for that reason, this bike is a terrible beginner bike. So I wouldn't buy a bike like this unless I had a year or two at least of experience under my belt, and I could ride confidently and competently, knowing that I'm not going to be dropping this motorcycle. Now things happen, of course. Even if you're a great car driver, something might happen and you might wreck your car. Things happen. But you want to get to an ability level where you're not a fresh beginner anymore. Anyways, I'm getting off subject. So what makes a good beginner bike is something that you can drop, and if there's a mishap, which inevitably will happen, you're not going to be out a whole bunch of money for any repairs, and you're not going to have all kinds of grief, because you want to be able to ride something and not have the worry of, okay, am I going to drop this and bankrupt myself financially. So yeah, as a beginner bike, you're going to want something that's on the lighter side, that you have the proper equipment on the bike as well, that if you were to lay the bike down, it's going to be saved. So
let me jump into the proper equipment. So on any new bike, especially if you're riding on the road, this doesn't apply for dirt, you're going to want what's called an engine guard, or a crash bar, or a highway bar, as some people call it. On Harleys, it's the bar that's mounted at the front of the frame that when you drop the bike, that's the first thing that hits, and it protects the whole engine and inside of the bike, like the gas tank and stuff, so that you don't have that damage there. So yeah, if you're learning how to ride a bike, you're definitely going to want something like this. Guys on sport bikes will use the frame sliders. Basically these large oversized pegs that jut out of the side of the bike that are going to hit first before the side of the bike and the fairings and everything. So you're definitely going to want something like that set up. Now, I know I'm kind of jumping around, but if you are learning how to ride and you have access to dirt bikes or riding on the dirt or out off-road and stuff, I highly recommend this type of learning in this type of environment. Jump on like a little 250cc dirt bike or something like that and start riding. This is great because, once again, if you drop a dirt bike in the dirt, chances are it's no big deal. You dust yourself off, get back up, and start riding again. And you don't have to worry about traffic behind you and roads, public roads. Which, by the way, if you are learning on the road, you're going to want to learn on like a cul-de-sac or a quiet neighborhood with not a lot of through traffic, where you don't have to worry about a lot of other drivers and everything. But if you have access to off-road and dirt bikes, like a 250cc dirt bike or something like that, that's a great learning tool. If you're looking for a resource to just get started immediately and start learning how to ride bikes immediately, I have this class that I created online on how to ride a motorcycle, and I teach you how to ride a motorcycle on a Harley-Davidson. And this is a great thing to view these video series and to use these videos as a reference as you're learning. Now, there's no substitute to actually getting on the bike and actual real-world training on the motorcycle. So a class is really important. But if you wanted to start learning how to ride immediately, my class that I have is a pretty good resource that I've created. I'm going to put a link in the description of my video series tutorial on how to ride. And I have a discount on the class for my YouTube subscribers. It's $15. Again, this is just something to kind of get your feet wet, so to speak, and to learn the basics and to reference, but there's really no substitute to actually getting on a bike, which leads me to my next point. I highly recommend a class. In California, we have the basic rider course. It's offered at a lot of like colleges around Southern California. I know there's one in Cerritos. There's one that we refer a lot of people to in Mount Sac, Arroyo's motorcycle training school. So a lot of like junior colleges will have them. So this is something that I always recommend to people. The other benefit of doing this is that fulfills half of the requirement of getting your M1 endorsement, which is your motorcycle driver's license. So you kind of kill two birds with one stone by going to a course. You become legal on the road, and obviously it tells you or teaches you some vital information about riding a motorcycle. Plus you have their bikes, their smaller bikes, that you don't have to worry about the repercussions of dropping the bike or whatever, and you're set up in a really safe environment. So kind of back to the main subject though, and what bikes are good for beginners. Really in the Harley-Davidson world, the Street 500, the Street 750, those are great Harley-Davidson beginner bikes. The Sportster family is also a family that's real popular for people that are just starting riding. And there's bikes within the Sportster family that are more for advanced riders, like the Roadster, and there's bikes that are more suitable for newer riders, like maybe the Iron. But even an Iron 883, you're about $9,000 on that thing, and it's a real sturdy bike, especially if you get like some engine guards and stuff. I know a lot of people that buy that as their first bike. They ride it, they love it. But as a brand new bike for a brand new rider, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most perfect beginner's bike in the world and number 1 being the worst bike in the world for a beginner, I'd probably give the Iron right around a 6.5 or a 7. And I'd probably give a Street, and this is on-road bikes only, I'd give a Street a 9, most likely. The bikes that I'll give like a 10 to would probably be like a supermotard, like a supermoto type bike that is like a dirt bike that's been converted to the road. I will say though, that bike is not going to be a good road bike. You're going to quickly grow out of it. It's very limited to what you can use it for. I mean, you can't even go on the freeway or anything with that type of a bike, depending on the displacement, of course. I'm talking like a little 200cc bike, and it's not going to be, you're going to have to wind the engine out. It's going to vibrate a lot, at higher speeds. But and that's the thing with Harley-Davidson is they don't make a bike that is that small, you're that limited in scope of what you can use the bike for. So, on a scale from 1 to 10, I'd give a street 500 or 750 a 9 for a road bike, and as opposed to an off-road bike. And I'd probably give a Sportster like your 883 super low, or your Iron, or your 48. Your 48, you're now $2,000 more, you're $10,000 plus. But I'd give those bikes probably about a 7 as far as how good they are for newer riders. Now, this question I mostly get asked on like my Softail and Dyna videos. People say, oh, is the Lowrider or is the Fat Bob or is the Slim a good bike for beginners? And I guess let me just define beginner a little bit. If you're someone that knows how to ride a motorcycle already, you have some experience under your belt, whether it be on or off-road, and you have at least like a year of experience, then yeah, the bike is fine for newer riders. At that point, it's just how you ride it and what type of heavy traffic or high speeds, how you ride it, that's going to determine whether or not you can handle it and you'll be safe on it. Now, if you're a brand new fresh rider and you're just learning how, maybe you just barely got out of the course, or maybe you haven't even taken a course on how to ride, you don't know the first thing, then these bikes are not good beginner bikes. For a brand new fresh rider that doesn't know how to ride, I'd probably rate a Softail or a Dyna. It's because they're about the same weight and a lot of them are about the same height. Softails being a little bit shorter in some circumstances. I'd probably only give these bikes maybe like a 4 for beginners. Just because there's more power than you need in them. They're more expensive, a lot more expensive than what is functional and practical for most newer riders. You can get engine guards on these bikes, but they're just not a good brand new beginner bike. So yeah, if you're someone that's just learning how to ride and you want to be in the motorcycle, you want to be in the Harley-Davidson world immediately, grab a street. Or if you're a little bit bigger person, you're taller, and maybe you want to hang on your bike for a little bit longer than a street, or maybe you just like the traditional air-cooled mechanicalness of a Sportster as opposed to the higher revving water-cooled nature of a street, then get the Sportster. The other thing that I would highly recommend, if it's available to you in your area, is the rider course that was developed by Harley-Davidson Motor Company, which is called Riders Academy. Some Harley-Davidson dealerships have it. Personally, my family store, does not offer it just because we're landlocked, because we're in LA and we don't have the land to do it on. But a lot of Harley-Davidson dealerships do have a Riders Academy. And so if you want to jump right into the Harley world, you love Harley-Davidson and you want to get into that world, I would recommend seeking after one of those classes as a first choice, as opposed to one of the local community colleges, like a basic rider course or something like that. That way you jump on the streets immediately. The streets are the bikes that are used in these Riders Academy courses. So you can check out this bike as well, kind of have a dual benefit of taking this course. You get to get on an entry-level Harley-Davidson, see how you like it, and you get to learn on a Harley-Davidson and be at a Harley-Davidson dealership to kind of get exposed to the Harley world as well. So if you have it available at a local Harley shop and you want to learn how to ride a bike, I would definitely recommend one of these courses. So in closing, guys, I'll just say this: some Harley-Davidsons are terrible beginner bikes, and some Harley-Davidsons are really good beginner bikes. And really the three type criteria that you can go by is how expensive the bike is, how heavy the bike is, and what the displacement is, or how big the engine is, what the CCs are, the displacement. So typically speaking, the heavier it is, the more powerful it is, and the more expensive it is,
the less of a good beginner bike it is. Whereas if it's a lighter, inexpensive, and smaller engine, chances are it's a pretty good bike for a beginner. And that's just kind of a generalization, blanket statement, but generally those three things are a really good indicator of whether or not the bike is good for a beginner. Another thing I'll comment too on, guys, and this is totally off topic, but it seems like in the media lately there's been a lot of like the financial experts analyzing Harley-Davidson because their sales have gone down a little bit recently, and they attribute that to, according to them, Harley-Davidson not building a product that is appealing to the millennial generation, and the baby boomers being Harley-Davidson's core customer, and the baby boomers now aging out of riding motorcycles, and these financial and industry experts are claiming that Harley-Davidson isn't doing enough to capture the millennials and that new generation of rider. And I would about 80% disagree with this. I would say really what the problem is, it's not a Harley-Davidson problem, it's a motorcycle industry problem. And that motorcycle industry problem specifically is the fact that we're now in a time when the barriers to entry into the motorcycle world are higher. You know, guys like my dad used to be able to pull his dirt bike out of his garage, get on it, and just ride off to wherever he wanted. He didn't have to worry about insurance, liability, tags, green sticker, red sticker. And you know, for those of you who don't live in California, maybe don't know what I'm talking about, but there's just all kinds of barriers to entry now. Now, if you buy a road bike, you've got to have that thing. You got to have a license, on an endorsement on your license. You got to have proper insurance, and you have to find an area that you can ride and not have a whole bunch of traffic and other things. Now, this might not be a problem if you're out of like the city areas like LA or New York, or you know, some of the big metropolis urban areas. Maybe if you live out, you know, in the country, you're fine, you don't have this problem. But it's just so expensive for this younger generation to get into riding motorcycles now. They just don't have the accessibility like, you know, guys 40, 50 years like the baby boomers had, where you know, you get an inexpensive bike and you don't think twice about it, you jump on it and you ride away. And with all the laws and you know, litigation and stuff that goes on in today's world with insurance and proper registrations and taggings and everything else, and riding bikes, you know, you got big areas of the desert completely, you know, walled off now because of, you know, environmentalists and things like that. It's just a lot harder to find opportunities for new riders to actually get on there. It's more expensive, and there's just a lot more barriers to entry. So that's my rant for this video. Sorry if you didn't care to hear my rant, but that's kind of my opinion right now. Anyways, guys, I appreciate you watching my video. Hopefully you got some information from this. Hopefully I answered a lot of your guys' questions. As always, if you have any additional questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'm real good about getting back to people and answering any questions. If you're looking for a Harley-Davidson in the Los Angeles area, the Southern California area, hit me up. You know where I'm at. Thanks. Bye-bye.